Come on. There you go. Okay. Good morning out there. We'll be starting here in a minute. Good morning. We'll be starting here in just a few minutes. Everyone's getting their coffee and their Satan donuts. So I have to feed myself. That was a great turnout yesterday.
Yes.
My heart was huge. It is my favorite. I hope you do that again here soon. Oh, it's amazing. I think that's what I love. It's just so organized. It is amazing how much you do and don't realize because it's so organized. I did how many thousands? Unbelievable. I first ran into them in Greenville, South Carolina. Our church is how many days in? Oh, yeah. And that's all. I love Presbyterian. It's so cool. It's just so All right. Okay, everybody, we're going to start here. Everybody else, get ready. See, people are leaving now because y'all are. Just kidding. Yeah, somebody probably just saw the story of Satan, saw me on there and go, I knew it, and just it's probably Karen. Actually, Bob back here, he had a better name for it. We should have had it Donuts and Satan. That's a little more accurate. All right, so we're getting ready to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you all for being here this morning. This has been a lot of fun. This will be our last class about Satan. And I promise you we can do some other ones probably that will branch off from this because I've had questions from you about other things. But remember, I'm just trying to show the basics of Satan in the Bible itself, okay? And a couple pieces from that. But to get into the deepness of good and evil, it's a totally different subject that stems from this, but would take classes within itself. And we can do that. So I will say that this morning I came to set up and realized that my charger wasn't in my bag. So I had to go back home. And then I tripped a little bit out there, and I finally just stopped for a minute. And I said, "Okay, Satan, just trying to get me to say something before the class." All right, so the story of Satan. I just want to go back real quick. Oh, you know what? I know what I got to get to do. There you are. Come on. Show. There you go. It always takes the third class for me to start figuring everything out, right? So, and you should work. Come on. There we go. Come on. There we go. So again, just a few things I want to talk about is to look back, because again, it's important to look back. And if you are joining us for the first time, I want us to connect, but to look at what we're going to talk about today. Again, we've talked a little bit about who is Satan. We've gone through the historic documents. Remember, this is really important to see where Satan is showing up, because again, I think y'all learned last week, it's actually amazing that Satan's not in the Bible as much as you think, right? I mean, I grew up thinking it was all throughout the Bible, but then to find out that no, the stories, there's only just a few, and then there's references about Satan, not actual stories of Satan, which, I mean, for years, I thought there was. Again, I want us to always remember, because I had a couple of questions about it. Again, remember, the question was about Garden of Eden, and did they understand about the snake? But remember, there was no concept at that time of Satan. They knew the snake was evil, right? And it turned the people. They got that, but the concept of Satan wasn't quite connected. So it's, again, when we get here about the return back to Jerusalem, they've now learned from the Persians about Satan, so they're putting the connection. So they're enlightened on putting a name or a sticker on, and so now they're going back and they're looking at their stories, okay, and going, oh, wait a minute, here's where we can put a name tag on Satan throughout the Bible. All right, and we talked about the fall of Satan again, okay, so. And again, like I said, we talked about the opposer. That was one of his names, the opposer in the Garden of Eden. We talked about last week Satan, the adversary. Remember, there's only two what do you call it? Stories of him, and he's in the courtroom. And one is with Job, saying, yeah, of course Job loves you, because God is kind of proud of Job, right? And said, oh, yeah, well, he loves me. Well, of course he does. Look at him. He's basically a multimillionaire, and he's got everything he possibly wants, and you protect him. So why wouldn't he love you? But the truth is, he loves what you've given him. He doesn't love you. And so that's where that battle, like I said, that's a whole class. But there's where the battle of this adversary, or this prosecuting attorney, going after Job. And the other one is where we see him come up and he is Joshua in the court, but it was very quick. And again, he's trying to make him look like a bad leader, and God throws him out again. We then saw and that was in Zechariah. We saw Satan the Templar, right? Templar. I keep saying the Templar. Sorry to the Templars out there. Family being a little piece of that, I really am embarrassed to say that. Some of the Templars weren't exactly saints either, sir. And which one of us is? But the tempter, not Templar. I'm going to get a call from them later on this afternoon. Satan the tempter, and we know that there he's with the temptation of Christ, right? And then we talked about Satan influenced Judas. Again, what made him betray Jesus. Somebody asked me a question about that last week, because I guess the way I put it was that the oil or the dip that Satan took with Jesus, that entered him, the oil itself. No, what I'm saying is that's the symbolic of. They're both together. It's Jesus. Remember, it's Jesus and Satan, Jesus and Judas, and they both dip into the sauce, and then they both take. And at that time, here you've got good, and now you've got evil. And so that's where Judas goes out, and he, for 30 pieces of silver, he turns Jesus in, and he betrays him. This famous picture with a kiss. Okay, so and then we talked about, even though this is St. George, we were talking about the defeat of Satan the dragon, and that's where we left off. So today I want to look at things to learn is, what does Satan look like? We've been waiting on that, right? That's what everybody's been wanting to know. What does Satan look like? Interpretations of Satan's look. So let's look at that. Believe it or not, it goes over time. Active evil, just talking about some of the things that he does, and we'll see why we get to that. Devil and hell, and just a little piece on that, okay? So again, that could be a whole thing. And what can we do? I'll just go ahead and give you your doom. But anyway, I'm kidding. Come on, you're supposed to. No, see, Satan's got y'all all wrapped up. So where does Satan get his looks? Because I know growing up on Halloween, right? It's one of the big costumes. This is what we see. The devil horns, right? Famous. You know, his tail, and he's red, and all of that fun stuff. Well, we remember. So anyway, so what does Satan look like? Anyway, hold on. I want to look at something real quick. I wrote. Okay, so just to go back real quick. Okay, so I was showing you those pictures. I just. Remember, Satan did not step suddenly from the shadows of absolute evil all at once. He came into this cosmic drama. He found his way into the part, and matured in the role. It took centuries for the Christian devil to get himself the various characteristics of the devil who make scattered appearances in the Bible. Satan is present only in a few places, as we just talked about in the Old Testament, book of Job, Zechariah, we can say that Eden, so Genesis, and we see him in the New Testament. So what does Satan look like? Again, I just want to show this progression. Well, first, let's see what the Bible says, because this is how we kind of picture him, right? Even I think this is, hey, how are you? I believe this was Bugs Bunny, if I remember. And honestly, I didn't look him up, but just when I saw the picture. Remember that? God knows what he did, but you know, Bugs Bunny got him. So let's take a look at the. Let's look at the first in the Bible. What does the Bible actually say that Satan looks like? Well, the closest the Bible comes to describing what Satan and the demons look like is in 2 Corinthians 11. Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. In other words, the devil is an invisible spirit, a spiritual person, which means that he does not have physical appearance. Okay? So, like for us, what are we? Can somebody tell us? So we have angels, right? And our spirit, what are we?
Mortal, corporeal.
Okay. Anybody else? I mean, you're correct, but there's another word. We're embodied spirits. Okay, so there's a difference, right? There's a spirit and there's an embodied spirit. In other words, we have this stuff all over us. Okay, and so Satan does not. We have these body appearances. And so anyway, you get what I'm saying. And so, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood. So this is what Ephesians is telling us. So this is something we have to be very careful about, because we're always thinking of a physical appearance of Satan, and there isn't a physical, as in skin, physical look at him. So that makes it actually a little more dangerous, doesn't it? When there's not somebody you can come face to face with. So therefore the big problem is trying to describe what Satan looks like, because spirits are by definition non-physical, and it's impossible to assign physical features to a non-physical entity. As spirit beings, even the demons do not have noses, eyes, hands, feet, tails, or anything else that might look for drafting the description. Remember, for instance, give you a couple of examples. Remember when Jesus took the spirits out, and what did he do? You just preached on it recently. He took the spirits and he threw them into pigs. You remember that? And the pigs, right?
They drowned.
They drowned. They ran into the lake and they drowned. So it wasn't, you didn't see these demons coming out as physical beings running out. He had to move them into a physical of the pigs. And there the pigs physically run into the lake. Remember, Jesus is walking into the graveyard, right? And there's a man, and he is held. He's bound by chains. And Jesus starts to talk to him, and he's like, "What do you have to do with us, Jesus? The Christ." And it actually says who he is out loud. And he's telling him to be quiet. And so he starts to have a conversation. And the first thing he asks is, "What is your name?" Legion. Right. Notice that Satan is not standing there, or the demons are not standing there. They're actually in the man in the grave, right? So again, it's not this physical being. He's actually, the physical being is the human, in which Jesus said, right, he pulls the demons out, and then the man is free. He goes and he tells everybody what Jesus did to him. All right? So one reason why the Bible never describes, that's why one reason why the Bible never describes Satan's appearance. Even when we see him in the other ones, it doesn't talk about exactly what he looks like. Even the angel of light description in 2 Corinthians 11 is not meant as a sketch of his appearance. Rather, it's meant to emphasize the deceitful nature of Satan. Now that we have established that Satan is an angel, a spirit being, having no physical likeness that can be grasped by our senses, we can do something surmising. Should Satan decide to make a physical appearance, I'm getting problems this morning. Should Satan decide to make a physical appearance, he has manifest himself to us visibly. He would do so in a deceptive manner. So in other words, if he's not physical, he's going to do this in a deceptive way to you. Okay? The Bible does use a number of analogies regarding the devil. These help us understand not the appearance, but the personality. Some of these analogies include the angel of light. He pretends to offer something good to try to get people to follow his teaching rather than those of God. And that's according to 2 Corinthians. He's a roaring lion. We've talked about that a few times, right? The roaring lion is out looking for you, to consume you. The great dragon, we just saw that a minute ago in Revelation, in which he is the great dragon. So these are analogies of what he looks like, not the physical appearance. So therefore, where do we get the modern look of Satan? Well, we have to go to the Dark Ages. The good old Dark Ages. This is a very scary time for Europe. The Black Plague has now hit. People are scared. You can imagine the fear going. Loved ones are dying. The disease can make you look pretty bad, right? I mean, physically, and also, you see the bodies. And I just can't even imagine us going, having to see something like that. And so I was trying to put on here, look at like the different arts. See, I mean, people are dying everywhere, and people want answers. What's going on? Right? What is this happening to me? Why is this all happening to each other? Well, during the 14th century, as we know from our history books, Europe faced a dark period blighted by the Black Death, famine, and war. People sought answers. Again, why is this happening to us? What have we done? Fear of the devil and his influence increased because of all the suffering, death, and grief. In other words, we must have done something, or something has happened here in which we're suffering. The church didn't have to go far to seek answers. They started to teach more about evil of Satan, and the church was packed. So they started to try to explain Satan is on earth, and Satan causes suffering, and Satan is and people come in to listen. It may sound a little far-fetched to hear that, but like I told you a story, I think at the very beginning of my class, 9/11. I was by the Pentagon when it got hit. I was heading into D.C. And I was actually right before that having a conversation with the rector of the church when we heard about New York. And that was the only thing I knew about. And so anyway, he was from New York. And so he was sitting there going, I wonder what I need to do. And I said, well, I've got to go to D.C. I'll talk to you later. We had a real early morning anything. So I got up there. Well, I came back, and anyway, it's a long story. Talking to my office, all that. Came back home and went and talked to him again. And he said, I'm going to have a service tonight. Well, guess what? The place was packed. I was helping him going up in the attic, pulling chairs down from the attic, setting them up beyond the pews, and the place was packed. Fear. Why does this happen to us? Looking for those answers. Well, 9/11 was horrific. It was terrible. Imagine the Black Plague, right? And I mean, people just dying here and there. So again, they're packing the church. And so the church itself is teaching about hell and brimstone, about Satan. Satan can come after you and all of that. So anyway, I think you get my picture. They needed to fight this evil in the world. And they went to war against the devil, the church itself. Okay, so now they're trying to give some answers out there to people. The church believed and taught, started to teach that the devil sought out people and also sought out disease. And this is why this is happening to you. This is where we start to see them they sought out, they said the devil sought out women as partners. Okay. Witches. This is where we're getting witches. So guess what? They're causing some of this, right? If you're a witch, you're causing the rest of us to be sick. Who is it? And so now that fear starts to go up. Witches would sign pacts, they said, and engage in evil on his behalf. People were no longer seen as merely deceived by Satan, but now an active collusion with him against God. So now they're saying that Satan is going in and we're doing things against each other because Satan is inside. So it's more than he's just this presence. He's now actively in the world, or working against us and against God. By this time in European history, the devil no longer sat passively. Taking an active role, Satan is present in the world, stealing souls and recruiting people to do his bidding. That's what the word was back then. As a result of this massive death of people, fear and fighting an enemy out there, as well as the fear of Satan's destruction to the world, with the Black Death, the fear of what people witnessed, the hunger for answers, the enemy of God and the people came to light through medieval writers and artists. Suddenly, outside of the Bible, the great Satan himself makes an appearance in the world. So during this time, a reaction's happening, right? And so writers, poets, artists are starting to get into this Satan who is now actively after us, actively hurting us in the world. Let me see. And so we're starting to get more and more of what this looks like. A popular description of the devil is that he was a goat-like creature with horns, a tail, pitchfork. Some have suggested that such a description of the devil was conceived by medieval artists who were likely influenced by folklore and ancient mythology, trying to figure out what does this Satan look like. This influence of folklore from ancient mythology is believed to begin with two stories that came from the gospel. So we go back to the Bible. Let's take a look. In Matthew, I'll read. I just wanted this main part, and you'll remember this. This is Matthew 16. Okay. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades or hell will not prevail against it." From that time on, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and undergo great suffering at the hands of the elders and the chief priests and scribes, and be killed on the third day, and on the third day be raised. Do you remember what happened on this rock? And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "God forbid it, Lord. God forbid it. This must never happen to you." And Jesus turns to Peter and says, "Get behind me, Satan." All right? In this particular story, a lot's going on. I've taught it in other Sunday school classes, but sometimes it's easy to forget. But let's go, because I think it's really interesting. This is Caesarea Philippi. Okay? This is where Jesus was on the rock. As you've heard me talk about, Caesarea Philippi up in this area was a little bit of the red light district. Okay, if you know what I'm talking about. A lot is going on as for Jesus and his followers. This must have been a real eye-opener of the world. And so they go up. This here is called the gates of Hades, or the gates of hell. There's an actual name and an actual place. This was the temple of Pan, the god Pan. Okay? So Pan is the god of fertility. Pan lived in the underworld, and so the way it worked is in the winter, he was down in Hades, where it's good and warm, and then in the spring, he would come out of here because there was a river at the time, and a river came through out, and that's where Pan would go out and fertilize everything, from apple trees to goats to whatever it is. And so people would come to this, and it's described as incredible acts that happen in front of here because he's the fertility god, and they wanted to please the god. And so anyway, this all happened. Now what's interesting is there was a river that flowed through here and came out, and they said that also brought life right in the spring to everything. There was a massive earthquake and actually cracked down here and stopped the river itself from flowing out. So some say that was the church that overdid it. But of all places for Jesus to decide to build his church is in front of the gates of Hades, the gates of hell, in Pan's temple. Okay, so we've all read about Pan, right? We've heard about him. Pan is half goat, half man, was a lusty god of nature whose carnal appetite made him easy to associate with the forbidden. His goat horns, his cloven hooves came with the signs of sin, and would later be adopted by artists in their horrific images of the devil. And so we've seen him before, but now are you starting to see where this is coming from? Okay, so if you're an artist or you're a poet, I mean, you're trying to find somewhere to get your inspiration. Also in Matthew 25, it talks about the sheep and the goats. Remember, the sheep will go into heaven and the goats are going to go to hell. And the goats have what? Their horns on there. And so you're thinking of Pan too, with his goat horns. And so this is another inspiration. And it said, when the Son of Man comes to his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. In the story, the goats, again, is associated with not entering heaven, those who are bad, right? Then there's another big influence, and I brought a guest today, is our buddy Dante. Good old Dante. You have a lot to thank this guy for in all of your modern thinking of Satan and hell. God must have been brilliant. I picked that up because when we were in Rome, we were staying in this hotel. Apparently it said it was a former palace. I don't know. It didn't look like one at all. But we were sending pictures back to the kids, and Peyton's boyfriend goes, I know exactly where they're at, and tell them that they're right on the corner where they're at is Dante's home. And I'm glad he told us because I had no idea. And so I said, what is he talking about? And I get out and we walk down, and sure enough, there's a well and there's like this apartment type house and all of that. And that's where Dante's museum is. And so I said, well, I got to get that. I didn't get very much from here, but I had to get Dante. Dante has great influence on the world. In the 14th century poem, Inferno, written by Dante, is part of the Divine Comedy. Recounts a fictional journey through the 7 circles that make up hell before the character comes face to face with Satan himself. Dante describes Satan with 2 mighty wings, such as befitting were so great of a bird, and sailed of the sea. I never saw so large. No feathers were on them. He said these big old wings were like bats. Early artistic interpretation of the Divine Comedy featured shocking images of the devil and his demons inflicting almost unimaginable human suffering only to inspire people through thoughts about hell and the devil. And so I wanted to show, like, there's the Divine Comedy, the hell behind there, which is actually upside down. But I want to show you a little bit of medieval art, okay? So you're seeing where people now, their imaginations, where they're going with it. There's the horns, right? You see all that. And he goes and he devours. Remember talking about the line goes as roaring to devour you. And so we're picking up some things from the Bible, some of the stories. Then we also take like Pan, etc. And again, this is just the inspiration for artists and writers. All artists and writers need some inspiration. Notice the snake in there, right? So we got Eden, the snake of Eden. As a matter of fact, there's a few of them. It's a little frog, and he's devouring. Notice like the little pointy ears and all of that. So imagine in medieval times starting to see these paintings and these interpretations of how fearful you would be about Satan and coming in and devouring you. Satan coming in, is as I said earlier, where the church is saying is coming in and getting women to like him and do his bidding, and some of them became what we call witches, right? And doing their things, which is really funny, considering if we look back at the beginning when they were talking about Satan. Remember, he's all beautiful. Everything, he has all the jewels of the world and gold and everything is just beautiful. And then we have this. See, Satan, look at this coming after children. Satan's, look at this beast. Look at the wings. There's the wings in the back that he's talking about. They're like when Dante was talking about, they don't have feathers or anything like birds, but they're more like bats. So again, another influence. And so Satan's coming after your children too. The Black Death. Satan is here. God's very, upset that the one that has control here on earth, right? He's still ruling the world right now, is causing all of this for God's people. Satan again, and there's Jesus, and temptation, right? All of the nations can be yours, Jesus. All you have to do is bow and worship me. It's simple as that. And I've told you before, I get really excited a little bit about this. What would that have meant to a Jewish man at that time? The Roman Empire has taken over your country. They basically have enslaved your family. You've watched people die from the Roman Empire, and now you're telling me that all I have to do is bow to you, and all of this is mine. I can destroy the Roman army. That's tempting. If you've seen somebody in your family die because of these people, imagine it's more than just, hey, here's a nice property is what I'm saying. It's a huge temptation. Again, the temptation of Jesus, but look how this is now coming. We've made a figure out of where it didn't say that there was a figure of Satan. Satan is just talking to Jesus, right? Eat this bread, or turn these stones into bread. But now we have a figure, and look at his nose, his tail now. Look at this. So it's all changing. Again, the massive look of hell, eating, money, plague. This is the three heads of Satan they talked about, and it's supposed to at that time mock or the Trinity itself. So the opposite, right? And again, consuming. So then we have these things, right? And they came about. So we're almost done, I promise you. So we know now about the art and where we can see where this is starting to go with Satan in our modern day Satan today, right? See, it scares people. It scares the hell out of people. Look, they're running. Bye, Jonathan. So what about the pointy tail, the pitchfork, the red tights, right? Where do we get that from? Because every Halloween we see this. Well, I don't know. So I'm kidding. This was I must have mixed it. This is just another of the painting of people in hell. So here we go. The pitchfork, the horns, the red, and all of that. So I don't have pictures of that. That's the end of that. But anyway, the pointy tail. The devil's tail is another symbol connected to Revelation. And that's where St. John writes about the great red dragon. His tail swept down on a third of the stars, or his tail swept down on a third of the stars of heaven, and they were cast down to the earth. The pitchfork is also known as the trident. The pitchfork-like staff was used by the Greek god of the underworld, Hades, and represented his sovereignty over the dead. The red tights. The red tights, wearing the red tights is actually more of a recent invention. Now, we know about him being the red dragon, so it's not that ancient, but it was highly influenced by, believe it or not, Disney. Disney using him as the devil at times. At the same time, it also derives from the fact that in medieval mortality plays a figure, Satan was played in a red outfit. So in medieval times, when they had plays of the devil, they would put him in a red outfit and he would come on. That's the thing. So that's another place where they got that red look. Active evil. Theology, the idea of the devil, changed during this period as well. His role in the early Middle Ages was much like his role in the Old Testament. He was an adversary, but not an active enemy. Throughout the Middle Ages, Satan evolved into an aggressive force set by tormenting as many humans as possible. So again, what I was trying to say is in the medieval times, we see Satan actually developing again into this really horrific type person. Devil and hell, perhaps the most lasting image of the devil or associated with hell, which the Bible refers to as a place of everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. Still, the Bible doesn't state the devil will reign over hell. Did you know that? He will not reign over hell, but he will be banished there for eternity. The idea of that the devil governs hell may have come from, again, the poet Dante. Good old Dante comes back in the Divine Comedy, published in the early 14th century. In it, God created hell when he threw the devil and his demons out of heaven with such power that they created an enormous hole in the center of the earth. That was the folklore or the thing at the time. So the question is, what can we do? And I told you you were doomed, but nobody wanted to believe me. I'm just kidding. In all of this, you can see where, so I'm not saying that evil isn't real, and I hope you don't think that I'm taking this to be light, because the truth is there is good and evil in every single person in the world. And it's what we choose. What are we tempted by? Are we tempted by Satan, or are we tempted by Jesus in telling us how to live? We've all been there. How many of you, do not raise your hand, it's not confession, but how many of us have said to ourselves, don't do this, or don't take that, and we do it anyway, and go, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Right? There's that temptation, and it's in every single one of us. The reason I'm saying that is because I think sometimes we want to blame something out there when we can actually hurt somebody, or take advantage of somebody, or steal from somebody, hurt somebody. And we have the story that we do have this in our own hearts. Is evil real? Yes. So if you want to say the devil's real, yes. But we choose. We choose. It's not some little figure next to us making us do something. We have to make that choice, or that temptation is trying to make us do something. But we have the choice whether or not to accept it. Hate. Hate is Satan. Right? To hate someone is the opposite of God. Anything that opposes God is Satan, or the Satan, right? We learned earlier. So hate, racism, hunger, to me, is a sin in this world. When we have a world that can make a 3,000 calorie a day diet for the entire world, and yet we have people starving. So it's big, it's bigger, and that's what I think we're here to do. This is where we fight the Satan. When we, like yesterday, Melinda was with the youth and all that, and I went by real quick and said hi to them in one of the my favorite outreach projects of feeding God's children, or starving children, and which they're making food. So our youth yesterday was making thousands of bags of food. To me, that's fighting Satan. That's fighting evil in the world of people starving. And that's our job as Christians. This is why we come together to worship God as well as doing things for and loving our neighbor, because loving our neighbor is fighting the evil in the world. Well, also, what can we do? It says in our Book of Common Prayer to renounce Satan and all spiritual forces of wickedness that rebel against God. Do you renounce the evil powers of this world, which corrupt and destroy the creatures of God? Do you renounce all sinful desires that draw you from the love of God? Do you turn to Jesus Christ and accept him as your Savior? Do you put your whole trust in his grace and love? So remember, repentance means what? Turn around, right? And so it means that when we sin, and it will happen to all of us, it'll happen to me one day, I promise. Already happened like 4 times before I even got into the class. But it's turning back to God when we do. Turn back to God and do what's right. Any questions? We have 5 minutes if you'll have any questions. Yes?
Kind of a multi-part. So if Satan is described as not a physical entity, or Lucifer, I should say, but as light, it says in the Bible that he was made. How does something that doesn't have physical appearance have vanity? And
He was made, and and it's a fantastic question. So the question is, if God made him, how is he not there, right? I'm not saying that he's like the angels. He doesn't have skin, just like the angels. The angels are a spirit, and in that spirit of light, and so we're embodied spirits. We have a body that's on us. The real us is inside of us. We are a spirit, right? When we die, as my kids asked me, what happens to us? And I tried it when they were little because they heard it in church and they were freaking out a little bit. And I said, almost think about when we die. It's like when you, at night, you take your clothes off, right, that you've been on, that you've had on all day, and you take them and you put them in the hamper. That's not you in the hamper. It's you are right here. And in the same way, our physical bodies die. We have our soul, right? We have our spirit that's in us. Now, according to Christ, we will be reunited in the resurrection, right? We will actually be reunited to our physical being. Hopefully, better looking and more hair. But well, it's supposed to be heaven, right? I mean, but anyway, that's the difference. So, was he made? Yes, just like all the angels that are there now. But it wasn't in a physical. The skin, they don't have skin. So guess what? They don't receive pain and all of that up in heaven like we would.
So when we hear about the angels making appearances in the Bible, they take on that physical manifestation so that we can physically see them.
Okay, great.
Or is that a real appearance for them?
Yeah, in our view, we may see them, like say, for instance, Mary, right? It's supposed to be light in front of him, and he explains that he is a messenger from God, and you're going to have a child, right? And so we see these messengers come. Now we have heard some that they thought they were somebody. So it may be our perception, but they really don't have physical skin on them. Anybody else? Did y'all enjoy the class?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you learn something from it?
Yes.
Good. Okay. I really enjoyed doing this with you guys, and and I've learned a lot, but I actually learned some things here too. And what do you?
I just realized it's over.
It's over? No, Satan can't leave. No, yeah, it is. But it doesn't mean we can't have other classes that will stem a little bit from this, because I guarantee you, you probably all, when you go, you'll have some, because you'll talk to me over the last 3 weeks. And it's usually after class or it's a couple of days later as you're processing this.
Okay, I have one question.
Okay.
So Satan entered Judas, right? Mm-hmm. Jesus said, "Get behind me."
Right.
So he can enter us whenever, or we have to invite him?
He can, so there's where the temptation in our own lives, when we're suddenly going, man, I really want that cupcake, right? But I'm just using very generic stuff.
Right.
Right. But I have a right to accept it or not. So what they're saying is even Judas could have said, no, I cannot betray him. Okay. But he made the choice, the temptation. Like I said, I think Judas really, if you got, and this is a whole nother class of looking at his background, who he was, a zealot, they're ready to fight. Right. And I think he was trying to pick a fight. And so his temptation, right, for the Satan temptation is, let me put this in my hands. Once they arrest Jesus and his soldiers, that's it. Jesus is going to say, bring the angels, and they're going to come and they're going to destroy the Roman army. We're going to go take him to the seat of David, and happily ever after, we're going to be on his staff. And when he realizes he actually is arrested and there's nothing he can do about it, this is where all of a sudden that temptation's gone, and now he's very upset by what he did. But again, another temptation comes. He goes back to throw the coins back at the people. They said, we can't take blood money. And he goes out and he hangs himself in the field instead of giving Christ that chance. We actually see Peter do the same thing. But the difference is Peter held out, right? And because of that, he's forgiven 3 times. And I always said, I think if Judas had done the same thing, I think that that same conversation would have had with Jesus on that beach. Do you love me, Judas? Yes, I do. Right? And it may have been 30 times since it was 30 pieces of silver. I don't know. I mean, so anybody, that's a great question. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Guys, thank you so much. This has been just great. I love it. Let's see if I can do this. Guys, thank you too for all being here today. I really do appreciate it. And I'm going to try my best to see if I can get this thing to work. There we go. All right, guys, thank y'all so much, and God bless you. And I hope that y'all, let me check real quick. Is there any questions y'all have? No? Okay. Guys, thank you so much, and God bless you.